the cars
Step
bouncing.
up, hey?
Yeah,
wow.
It's a real deep cut even for me.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, I'm going to send you the YouTube clip afterwards. It's like, it's one that, like, it's a dance sequence at the start of, like, Step Up 3, maybe. And it's just like, it's a flash mob on the streets of Miami with, like, cars with the hydros and stuff. And it's like, and the song choice with it is like, let's go. Boom, 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 boom. And the cars are bouncing and
the cars are like,
yeah, it just works. And it just like is like a brain worm of mine randomly. At any time someone says, let's go.
Wow, Fast and the Furious went in a wildly different direction.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what am I watching?
Well, no, Fast and Furious went to space, so I don't think anything like it. It's still like the top.
Yeah, what? They did go in a different direction.
Yeah. Andrea and I still talk about, like, I think there was a rumor once that, like, could the Jurassic Park and Fast and the Furious cross over, and me and Andrea were like, at this point, let's do it. Like,
yeah. I miss when they were just ripping DVD players off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Brian O'Connor's just, the line from anyway. Never mind. I've already got it recording. That's going to be a good B-roll clip. All right, get your head in the game, David.
Top of the tongue, teeth in the lips.
Human Torch was denied a bank loan. All righty. Good evening and welcome to the CREEDCAST. It is Friday, the 28th of August, here recording tonight. Jamie and I pushed back our preview show for this week's round 3 clash between your Port Adelaide Footy Club and the GWS Giants to Friday, partly because we had a pretty cooked week between us both with our day jobs, and as well as the game being on a Sunday allows us a little bit more flexibility in our preview recording. So, yes, as I said, this Sunday, 12:05 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time, Alberton Standard Time, as we like to call it. We are playing up in Canberra. It is a Friday. I think I was reading Corroboree Group Oval Manuka, Canberra, and I went Canberra. So there you go. Welcome to Friday podcasting, ladies and gentlemen. But yes, that tongue twister is where we are playing GWS this weekend on Sunday afternoon. So I should throw to Jamie now before I twist my tongue with my twang any more than I already am. Jamie, good evening, mate. Welcome. Save me.
Cranberry juice. What are you drinking? Cranberry juice. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CREEDCAST for another night of Creed ASMR. No. Hello. How are you? It's Friday. Well, for us it is. For everyone else listening, it's the weekend. Woohoo! And that means football. So let's get into it.
Yeah. Huck it, chuck it, football. All Sunday afternoon. Yes, let's get into it. We will look at the matchup shortly and some interesting ins and outs for our side in particular. Just nothing too surprising, but still just interesting and some welcome returns. But a bit more news. We'll leave the best to last in the women's preview, but just a little bit of news out of the men's side to start off this evening. And since we recorded, obviously when we recorded our review of the weekend's games on Tuesday, a lot of exit interviews had already occurred, and we'd found out a lot about some of the players that were leaving the club already, whether that be through $2 million offers in free agency or the other side of it and just being delisted. It's a wild swing that happens, but of course, once you get past that, you start getting the better news about players that are sticking around. And we got the 4 players in particular so far in, I think the first ones to get excited about. Well, I'll read them all out and then I'll throw to Jamie. But Baylor O'Brien and Mitch Sadow, who were our SSP signings this year, get a 1-year extension. So they get another year to kind of prove themselves in the system. So it's a good kind of bit of list management. You get some promise out of them this year. Give them another year. See if it's a sustainable level, and then you can go on from there. Both of them have impressed at times this year, particularly Mitch Sadow has already become a bit of a cult figure, I think. So really excited for them to get another year and excited to see how they can grow in 2027. And of course, Lockie Jones, who was, of course, a first-round draft pick from 5 years ago, NGA product, gets a 2-year extension off of the back end of this year. And Ewan McKinlay, who was a mid-season draftee from 18 months ago, gets 2 years as well. And of course, we were really, really enjoying his season until it was unfortunately cut down through injury, but it's a great reward for his efforts and what he showed in the earlier part of this year that he gets 2 years as well. So it's a fun quadruple group of re-signings there, Jamie. None of the big stars, but just guys that you need in your side doing what they're doing. And certainly Lockie Jones in particular, probably make it or break it time for as far as what level of AFL footballer he can become in the next couple of years. And then, the likes of Ewan McKinlay and the other O'Brien and Zato just get to continue their journeys as well.
I'm quite comfortable and happy with all 4 of those to get extended. The SSP extensions, also housemates as well. That's right, isn't it? Zato, Balin O'Brien, and Xavier Bammett, from what I understand. So, yeah, O'Brien and Zato, cult figures, or more particularly Mitch Zato, and for good reason. I came across his Instagram page the other day, and he put up a few snaps from the season, and gratuitously, he put one in where he looked fucking ripped in it as well. And I was just like, yeah, fuck. No wonder you have the capacity to play AFL football. He is a lean, mean fighting machine, and I love that about him. So I'm more than happy for him to get another go. And like you mentioned, it will now be whether it can be sustained, because as we've just seen with Manny Liddy, unfortunately getting the wave goodbye. When you do come in, Manny Liddy was brought in under another coaching tenure. So maybe, it's Josh Carr moulding his own list, obviously in conjunction with the list management team. But it's still there that Manny Liddy had a great half a season after coming in midway through 2025. And then unfortunately, for things mostly out of his control, he couldn't really impact in 2026. And that's all she wrote for an AFL career, or maybe not. That's still left to be seen. But so sustainability will be key. The benefit for those 2 is they're slightly younger than Manny Liddy was going to be. So they've already shown a bit, and they've got age on their side. So very happy with them. We're huge Lockie Jones fans, just moving on to that one as well. And I think he's, with continuity in his body this year, I think he's proven that he can be a very solid AFL player. For him, perhaps it's whether he can take his game to another level, similarly to Jace Burgoyne this year, and having a consecutive season, where he can get continuity in his body. And that's the only real way that he will be able to take that next step up. He's still relatively young, so it's all there for him to do. And wouldn't that be a handy addition to our squad as it moves forward on the premiership clock, as it were, that gets brought up from time to time. And that's what it's all about. It's improvement from your existing players and bringing in blue chip talent either through the draft or trade. And he's definitely one that has that capability in him, in my opinion. And we saw that progression this year, and the extension is deserved. Ewan McKinlay being the other one. I think he surprised a lot of people, including myself, in how he was able to maintain his position, but deservedly so in the end. We got a bit concerned about a month in, but pretty literally from that point on, I believe it was the Richmond game or thereabouts, quite literally from that game on, he took his game to another level and he started impacting as a winger in a more palatable fashion. Obviously, yeah. And I really appreciated that the Port Adelaide socials put up his goals and gave myself a bit of a pat on the back and ourselves a pat on the back, because we've spoken about how all of his goals just seem to be noteworthy. And that was what they went in conjunction with the extension. So yeah, wrapped for all four of them. I look forward to further list management updates, I suppose. But yeah, real happy with those four to get things going.
Yeah. The Ewan McKinlay package was a real bangers only kind of Spotify playlist, the goals list. So yeah, look forward to a few more of those over the next few years. I guess a little bit of news on probably last bit of news on list management, so to speak. And it's no changes here or there or anything, but just as we continue to monitor the Zach Butters situation, and there's been a bit of news that Western Bulldogs have improved their offer because they're all kind of battling to put their best offers on the table, and the Western Bulldogs have apparently improved their offer, which of course we know that Zach Butters was a boyhood Western Bulldogs fan. So what that does to the landscape of what's going on with his decision as to where he prefers. I will also say there was of course the Gettable podcast that again still troubles me somewhat that there is an official AFL player movement podcast, but I do respect what Cal Toomey and Riley Beveridge do in that space, and Cal Toomey's kind of seems to be kind of your almost like the Adam Schefter, Shams Charania kind of like newsbreaker on player movement. So he has a fair bit of kind of knowledge of that space, and it seems to be that they're suggesting what Cal Toomey was kind of saying on Gettable this week was that Zach Butters is keeping his platform pretty open and like his options open, and there's no real desire to make a strong decision either way is how I read what they were saying. And if, as we talked about on Tuesday, my opinion will be on Zach Butters' legacy will be greatly shaped by how this process goes. We're all cognizant of the fact he wants to go home and as supportive as we can be, despite being chastened as we are. But obviously we want this to be good for Port Adelaide, as Tim Jennifer said in 5AA in great words. He said it doesn't matter. Zach doesn't matter to us now. It's all about what we've got to do for Port Adelaide. Yet snaps for Timmy G. Always snaps for Timmy G. But if Zach Butters is keeping his options as open as possible in trying to aid Port Adelaide's efforts, then that is a good thing. So whether that remains across the next few weeks as we get to the trade period will be, it would just depend on what kind of personal kind of desires come into that play, where agents play their role. There's a lot of moving parts still at play, but at this current juncture, I'm, quite, cautiously trying to be optimistic about who Zach Butters is as a person, his role in this, and how he's handling it, and how it does seem to be that all the clubs are putting the three. Seems that he put Collingwood to the side very quickly, but the three that are still on the table, so to speak. I'm hoping, how I'm reading the tea leaves and what the pundits are saying, is that he's trying to keep his options as open as possible to help Port Adelaide facilitate a trade. And just be basically as flexible as possible as to what can be done to get you home, and to a deal that's going to be pretty friendly to him either way, money wise, whatever it is. Obviously, money isn't the major player for him apparently, but money, trade pick, draft picks, whatever it may be. It looks like I'm trying to be optimistic at this point at this juncture in time that all parties are trying to facilitate this thing as best as possible for Port Adelaide, and of course, Zach Butters is probably looking at those three options and going, all of them work for me in one way or another. And yeah, Western Bulldogs are, who are currently leading at halftime in the wildcard match, are also somewhat improving their offer, and probably hoping to get the boyhood fan across the line.
Yeah. I am more or less trying to avoid all conversation until trade week comes along. So I'm glad you had your finger on that pulse, and thank you for providing that update. Yeah, because I agree with your sentiment about how it all unfolds, shaping the legacy and the perception of him and whatnot. But it's all just noise at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all just their key discussion point being wrung out every last drop right up until it comes, and yeah, so I couldn't get. And as far as I understand, the Western Bulldogs offer to Zach is basically they've upped their monetary offer to him it's not necessarily, again, this is what I understand, it's not necessarily they've upped their offer to what they will give Port Adelaide. So,
no, you are correct. It is about the what's on the table for Zach. But it depends if Port Adelaide would prefer to deal with Western Bulldogs, and if Western Bulldogs put a more,
and Zach actually goes to his boyhood club rather than just going on the rather than making the rich richer to borrow a portion of the review episode.
Yeah, it is just that thing of like, we don't want to do like Geelong. It's just icky and all those things. But we do hope that whatever comes of it. I think Timmy G's words this week were really, really good, and Tim Genevieve
couldn't agree with him more.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's if you've ever had the pleasure of just running into him at a club function or whatever, he's one of the nicest blokes you could ever meet, and very, very kind-hearted and all of those things. But when it comes to Port Adelaide matters such as this, Timmy G's like, straight as an arrow and very fair and reasonable with it. But he's just basically saying, it's what's best for Port Adelaide, and respectfully, he's more or less saying stuff what Zach Butters wants. It's about what Port Adelaide can do, because they have the control here still, as much as control as the contrived nature of restricted free agency in the Australian football landscape allows you to be. But hopefully, based on what I was talking about with Gettable, that Zach Butters is maybe being little bit more facilitative in that space than some could be. One more note before we get to the ladies preview. Andy Collins, who came in this year as director of coaching, has of course going to head back to Victoria for reasons of a personal nature. So what those are, I haven't looked into it too much. I just saw the clip, and I assume they haven't released too much. It's personal reasons, which hopefully all is well for him and his family, and whatever reasons he needs to return to Victoria. But still a bit of a disappointment with the kind of the group we got together this year. As far as how the kind of management of the game day and the team throughout the week and all those positions worked, I think that, we had a pretty good year on that front. So it's disappointing, but, wish him all the best. I guess that's all I've got to say about it. I just thought it would be remiss of us not to bring it up on the podcast, and there's not too much more detail there, but wish him all the best. And thank you for helping us usher in this new era, I guess.
I was really disappointed when I saw that come across my feed, just because all the interviews that I had listened to or watched of him, whether it be pre-season, on the eve of the season, I'm not sure how many he actually did during the season, but that my point still stands. Anytime I heard him speak, really impressed me. And to know that has only lasted a year, and now he's had to unfortunately move back to Melbourne. I think is really disappointing, because I'm sure, we're all cock-a-hoop with what was happening in terms of our, front office. Or is it front office or back office? Front office is coaching group. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Our coaching group and that kind of the staff around that, we're, as Port Adelaide fans, we're all pretty excited with, how things were coming together. And not only him, but then the other three who have been announced today. It's like it's just come together, and then it's quickly kind of dismantled in a few regards. From what I understand, though, there is, at least one quite tantalizing addition that's coming into the coaching box or whatnot, leading into this coming pre-season, which, until it happens. We'll talk about that then. But with Andy Collins, really disappointing. I hope he or family, whatever it is, I hope they're okay. I'm sure. I take it on face value. I have no other reason to think otherwise. It's because again, from what my perception of him, he was very keen to, you mentioned, usher in the new era, but like not only usher it in, but fast track it, be involved with it, get his claws into it for a good extended period of time. So feel for him. heart goes out to him if there's some, serious stuff going on. But yeah, it's disappointing all the same.
It is, yeah. It's one of those things that when we've gone into a new era and got a pretty good group together, you kind of just want to keep that group together as we go forward. But yeah, it's if that's the only change in that space, and I guess, and with it being personal reasons and nothing else, wish him all the best, and we kind of move on is what we have to do, same as we're having to do on the playing field side of it with Zach Butters. So we move on and we keep moving, and this football club has gone through many a player and many a coach, and still come out stronger on the other side. So we'll keep doing the same. Good segue, mentioning possible coaching inclusions that are to come, but haven't been announced yet. Moving to GWS this week on the women's side. Of course, as the top of the show, I mentioned we play at GWS at Corroboree Group Oval, Monica, Canberra. Tap myself on the back for getting that one out quite properly this time. This Sunday. So, mentioning on GWS so quickly, they omit Daisy Walker and bring in Emily Pease. We have a couple of strong inclusions, interesting omissions as well. Kirsty Lamb. So this is what's the interesting one. Kirsty Lamb was in the extended squad that was mentioned as omitted yesterday, and then today is managed on the Port Adelaide release, but then on the AFL website it says omitted, which is omitted, managed, whatever. It's just interesting that they can't. There seems to be a bit of maybe miscommunication about how that's going through, but Kirsty Lamb is one of the more senior players, and I guess start with her before we get to the rest of it. She is one of those players that we love her endeavour and strength around the contest and the experience, but as we this group develops, she is one of those players that feels like she's getting more and more on the outside a little bit as far as what she can provide a side that is young and moving forward, and with their maybe disposal a little bit of a weak point at this point, and we just need to get stronger in those areas. So she's going to be a real key senior head across the season, but in a side that is strengthening as players get back. She is finding herself on the outside, and whether it's managed or omitted, it kind of two words that can mean the same thing more or less, depending on on how you want to read it. She's out, and I'll throw to you to say I'll just read the other ones out because then it all rolls into one. But Sophie Eaton is also omitted, despite some strong performances. I think that's just a like for like with Sachi Syme coming back into the side and kind of taking her spot in the back line, and a big inclusion in Piper Window coming into the middle as well, which kind of more or less is a like for like in a way with Kirsty, although some quite different youthful prospects that Piper brings to the side, and maybe a little bit more of just that growing up in the modern game kind of thing that Piper can bring. So pretty happy with the changes, although I liked what Sophie Eaton brought, and obviously love Kirsty Lamb and what she's brought to the side as a senior head. But you got to be pretty happy with Sarch. Sarch and Piper coming back into the side as well.
Fuck yeah, Sarch. Yeah, you just simply had to bring these two players back in my opinion. And unfortunately, for Kirsty Lamb, while she offers unwavering pressure and aggression et al. And senior leadership, she didn't put up the numbers, and like you said, she is just on the outer of the side over the last 13 months, I guess you could say. And I guess this may be the trend where, players will continue to overtake her, and, if she can stick around and be good for depth, she definitely offers good depth. But yeah, when she does take the field, I suppose her numbers need to be better than what they were last week against Hawthorn, particularly when you're playing around the ball. And I neglect to remember her time on ground percentage. That may play a part too in her statistics, but yeah, unfortunately, like I said, these two players had to come in. Piper Window started last year like a house on fire and then abruptly got injured. So I look forward. They've whacked her straight in the center on the team sheet, which I think is great for her, and I hope that's what actually happens. That's where she can do her best work. Sophie Eaton, while we acknowledged an improved performance from her statistically and off the back of the Freo game, yeah, unfortunately, first-year player, we need to get back on the winners list, and it is a strong team, and it's part of the confusion as to last Sunday's effort is how strong the team was, but how handily they got beaten in the second half. And I don't think her year is done by any means, Sophie Eaton. I dare say she'll get back in to the side at some stage this year, but she just has to bide her time. Unfortunately, there's no second tier competition that she can keep her legs warm in. So, train hard and she'll be back in. I'm sure of it. But absolutely love the inclusions on our side of things. Interestingly enough, Emily Pease for GWS on the opposition side of things was one of their better players in our last encounter with GWS last year, that famous occasion for Gemma Houghton, of course, at Emily Pease being a backline player, and that's where the ball lived most of the time. So no wonder why she had good statistics from a GWS point of view.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, looking at GWS, it's an interesting side because they've been one that's been down the lower end of the ladder for the past couple of seasons of the competition. One that maybe we look at going into the year and go, there's a win to be had there. But we've got to be cognizant of the fact that they are 1-1 on the season. They did get handily beaten by Melbourne last Sunday at a similar time to we were playing Hawthorn by a score of 9 goals, 660 to 1 goal, 612. So, 48-point win to Melbourne there. They did get a win against West Coast in week 1. It is interesting, West Coast, a team that obviously with a young star like Ella Roberts and Daisy Pearce coming in and coaching them really well across their first year. They've started this year in somewhat of a interesting spot, having lost their first 2 games to GWS that we're playing this week, as well as Gold Coast last week as well. 2 of the, again, teams that have been the last couple of years spent their time at the lower end of the ladder. So easy whether that
beats,
or West Coast easy beats, or now, or are we
GWS and Gold Coast have been historically. Yeah. So yeah. What's going on, Coast, Eagles?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Ella Roberts. She's an absolute star, and you just thought that with the way that they brought themselves up the table last year, but they've lost their first 2 games to 2 teams that so it makes you again the nature of the AFLW competition is teams can, if they get the right picks in here and there, and we saw Sydney who came in at the same time as Port Adelaide into the competition, and we got one of our first huge wins in the competition was against Sydney. They've gone leaps and bounds and been playing some pretty competitive football of recent times. So you can grow quickly, but it means that. But you look at GWS beating West Coast in the first week and go, but then they get smacked by Melbourne last week, a Melbourne team that does look very, very good. So you've got to give the respect to GWS. But then I look at I do look at their midfield. They've got some stars in the midfield like you likes Parker and Beeson, who are 2 quite Beeson I think is their captain, and they're quite I'm flipping who's the captain, but two quite veteran stars in there. But I think they've got a second gamer in Yasmin Junchek, which I've mispronounced it. I apologise. I've just read it as I was reading the team sheet tonight, but I think she's a second gamer in ruck, so that's quite a stark difference to what Matilda Scholes has been coming up against in the first 2 weeks of the season in the likes of Mim Strong and Lucy Wales. She's had some very, very strong, competitive, all-Australian caliber rucks that she's come up against, and now she's coming up against a player that's 20 years old, and as obviously Matilda being a youngster herself, but a younger player that's debuted this year. Certainly not saying anything negative about her, but she's just simply an inexperienced ruck in comparison to Matilda Scholes, who's relatively experienced already despite her young years, and obviously containing the talent she does. She does take a 5 centimetre size advantage into this matchup as well, Matilda, and she's probably maybe relishing the opportunity to maybe try and have a crack at having one of those dominant performances that Matilda can have when she comes up against a inexperienced ruck, which will go a long way to maybe helping us flip the field back our way a little bit more, because that's where we kind of struggled a little bit in the second half last week, which is really, and the AFLW just being such a strong field position game. I mean, AFL in any game that's played in the field is a strong field position game, but depending on how the game's played, it makes even more precedence on making sure you're getting the ball forward, and Matilda, I think, might find herself. That's my key to this one, is just finally maybe we get a Matilda just goes ham kind of game, is, what we kind of want out of these kind of matchups, is like her to really exert her dominance, because we see her as a future best and fairest in the competition kind of winner potentially, and these are the kind of games that she can earn those kind of stripes, not to be denigrating to the opposition or anything like that and be disrespectful, but it's just these are the kind of games we expect Matilda to dominate.
Yes, we do. Yeah, and you're right. The first 2 weeks, a good, solid hit out, pun not intended, for Matilda, just to get her into the season competitively. How's that? Mim Strom and Lucy White. I mean, yeah, one of our biggest problems.
It's like the weighted bat in baseball when they're standing on deck and they've just got the weighted bat, and then she comes into a matchup where she's like clearly the dominant experience and takes the weight
exactly.
of the bat.
Yeah, weighted bat. That's a great. Lucy Wells and Mim Strom. It's a pretty weighty bat. From an analogous point of view, of course. And one of our biggest issues against Hawthorn was we kept kicking it to Lucy Wales, kicking it to the wrong ruck lady. Ruck lady. Funnily enough, GWS did get handily beaten to the tune of 8 goals against Melbourne. Yasmin Janšek did win hit-outs from an individual point of view. She had 20, but Georgia Campbell and Taylor Harris combined for 23, and GWS's backup got 4. So while individually she won hit-outs, it was fairly even in total. So, yeah. What to make of that? Interesting. Obviously, we speak about young players coming into the system and how it can benefit us. We have a bit more insight, obviously, into the Port Adelaide draftees and the sentiment. And I guess that sentiment goes around the whole country, right? Like, everyone has access to pathways now, and the national draft is where these AFLW clubs look for natural improvement. So from that lens, it's good to see that Janšek has come in and applied her trade from a hit-out, from a ruck point of view, quite satisfactorily. But to your point, Matilda Schultz should be looking at this as an opportunity to really dominate, because not only can she dominate in hit-outs, she can obviously dominate on the floor. Janšek had the 8 disposals against Melbourne, this is where the outside of the hit ruck contest comes into it. Georgia Campbell and Taylor Harris combined for 32 possessions. So that's where, from Matilda's point of view, winning it in hit out, great. Winning it on the ground, there's opportunity there too as well. And she did that to many, many opponents last year. Last game we played against GWS, she came up against Eilish O'Dowd and Fleur Davies, who combined for 8 hit-outs to Matilda's 20. Eilish O'Dowd is named in GWS's side. She'll probably play a bit of backup, I would imagine. She's listed on a half-forward line.
Yeah. First change ruckman. Yeah, moving on from that, it's kind of, I look at a back line I'm pretty happy with, and obviously our issues in giving up score late last week were more down to the fact that there was just a weight of pressure against our back line. And I hope that can kind of be mitigated a little bit by how we exit the ball better. That'll be one key for this game, is just finding a way to manage that exit ball better and try to relieve pressure on oneself, because we actually held up pretty well for a quarter and a bit until it just kind of overwhelmed and the game got away from us. What I'm really interested to see is how we go forward of the ball and try to maybe turn, because you saw just Hawthorn ability to get some goals out of situations where we just simply couldn't get the one-on-one, get the marks inside 50. Particularly, I'd love to actually have the time, if someone wants to pay me a full-time wage, to go through and rewatch games at a analytical level to see where we're taking our marks inside the forward arc, because I'd like to actually genuinely see how many times we've taken a mark inside the forward 30. So that's going to be one of the big keys to this one. An interesting backline for GWS. They've got Tilly Lucas Rod down there, who's a newcomer. Obviously, Hawthorn's, I think, inaugural captain. Poppy Waltz has come in from Brisbane as well. They've got some experience in Cambridge McCormick, but then Caitlin Fletcher and Grace Martin have got like a under 10 games between them as well. So there's some youth down there, some real experience that they've brought in. So a good mix. But we've got our forward line is a forward line strong in experience, and then with some good young stars, a good young star in Lauren Young as well. Of course, Indy Tahoe, who was a test earlier in the week after missing a game and over half a game against Hawthorn, is apparently fine. So that's good to see. But we need to find a way to get Indy and Gemma a little bit. Gemma's involved in the game in her barometer levels, but struggling to find a way. Like, she's kicked the 1 goal in 2 games, still getting a fair bit of the ball, but just find a way to get her scoring a little bit more. Justine Mules-Robinson has been quiet to start the year as far as the scoring forward goes as well. Caitlin Pope's had a great start. Lauren Young's had a great start, but basically when I look at that forward line, I'm going, well, there's, those 5 forwards have combined for 5 goals, I think, if I'm doing my quick math correctly. So, we want to start seeing maybe, Indy and Gemma pop up with a couple each or something. One of them, what helped last year was Indy would kick 3 or 4, or Gemma would, or both would in the real big games, but one of them would take the mantle as the year got going. Or sometimes if it was them maybe getting a little bit isolated, but then you'd have Justine Mules-Robinson benefit from the ground ball and get 2 or 3 goals in a game, or someone else. And we just haven't seen any of those. It's been a real spread of goal kickers. Obviously, the first week against Rio was a lower scoring game, but we won with defensive dominance and then getting enough score on the board. Last week, we got, we kicked 5 goals, but we get beaten handily. So what's going to be really interesting is what objectively is an improved midfield with Pipe Window coming in and Saatchi coming in behind the ball as well, what that can provide in getting the ball forward to those forwards and then maybe hopefully finding a little bit more ability to gather the ball in good position to score.
I concur. Justine and Gemma are both barometers of our side, and we discussed their importance ad nauseum almost, particularly last year. And I agree, we need to get them into the game. And this is where I am all for the AFLW improving its standard across the board and on from year on year. And part of that is strategically, skillfully, building the ball up and working the ball up the field that way. But I still think there's a place in the AFLW for some shock and awe, not chaos ball, but surge strategy in terms of your forward forays. And that's, you speak about games where Indy or Gemma were on the receiving end of a handful of goals, bag of goals. Sometimes it was because they were 1 out and we were just surging the ball forward towards them, which admittedly looks a bit haphazard at times. But you mentioned the AFLW being a very field position heavy, or not heavy. It's just importance at larger stages of gaining that territory and then converting off the back of that. And Australian rules football in the modern day in a nutshell. But I know where you're coming from an AFLW point of view. And we were standing there on the sidelines against Hawthorn and just watching them dominate field position constantly after half time.
I think I did make it, just to interject for a second. Did I genuinely make the turn to you at one point when the ball went down our end and said, "Oh, my neck hurts. I had to turn my head." I think that was a to you on the day, which isn't to be. It was kind of just that gallows humor of our team losing at that point, badly. But I genuinely was just I hadn't turned my head for half an hour, it felt like. And that's kind of what you're speaking to at this point in time, is just that's how heavy the domination was from Hawthorn, and that's what we've got to not have happen.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, what I want to see over the next coming weeks is that evolution of what Glenn Strawn wants to bring into our gameplay, but finding the balance because particularly when we're under heavy pressure, scoreboard and general play against Hawthorn and Fremantle being round one, we saw some of the girls being in two minds a little bit about how they should attack from the defensive third or even the midfield when it's been fairly singularly focused. That's probably simplifying it too much under Lauren Arnell, particularly last year. But it was a heavy kick side. I think one of the commentators from last Sunday's game mentioned that we were one of the higher teams in terms of long kicks and gaining meters through kicking. And yeah, for the likes of Tahoe, to go back to my original point, Tahoe and Houghton, that works perfectly for those two because they can work in space and really put the fear of whatever data you believe in into the opposition. Whereas if we're looking to build the ball up, I'm not sure if our skills are quite there yet. And the only way to get better is to do it. I understand that. But we just need to find that balance so that we can build the ball up if we're under a bit of pressure defensively, or if the opposition have set up well. But when the trigger's there to be pulled, I want to see them pulling the trigger and allowing these forwards to take advantage, not only of GWS backline, but the defences that we're coming up against in the weeks to come. But yeah, like you said, GWS defence has a few interesting pieces. I believe Cambridge McCormack played in our game against them at the end of last year. Tilly Lucas-Rod and Justine Mills-Robinson is a great matchup, I think. Two very experienced campaigners, two hyphenates as well. People probably thought that's what I meant off the bat, but no, yeah, just two experienced campaigners, which and both play with a bit of pride too. So I look forward to how that matchup goes. And our three tools, again, if we can get the ball in their vicinity, it's a headache. But we need to get it there with some fluency or some speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we've got three real, and they're all playing. Indy Tahoe's look dangerous at times. Lauren Young's obviously look dangerous. Gemma Houghton is just the epitome of danger. So they're all, there's such a weaponization that can be had there. It's just like trying to get the ball, more dangerous ball to them to take advantage of that weaponry we have down there. Because, yeah, like Lauren Young's been really impressive to start the year, but it's just like she's kicked a couple of goals, but you want to start seeing her get a little bit more opportunity to do that, and then that will open up opportunity for the others as well. It's just, and that is just that ball use. And like you said, it's a really good point you bring up about kind of how we're, managing our progression as a side going forward. The build-up of play and better ability to dispose of the ball player to player as we move down the field is a really important thing going forward. But then you've got to, if we are a team that wants to still have a challenge at finals this year, you've got to figure out, and it's all about your mental application to the game and to bring it, we're going to bring this up every week. Glenn Strawn's $5 versus $50 plays thing. It's just like the $5 plays are good, but at some point in that sequence of chains of $5 passes, then you've got to have the game awareness to understand, and sometimes you got to see it before it's there in a way, if that makes sense, to take that $50 play to break the lines, because that's where we're struggling. Is we're not really we're building up and doing some nice little crisp kicking and quick kicks, but then I
joked about a $20 play, I think maybe in last week's preview. I'm not sure, but there are denominations between 5 and 50 as well, and
there is.
It's all well and good to coach that, and I love that phrase, by the way. I'm not jumping off Strawny after one loss early in the season, because like we said, we're still ahead of our ledger from season 2025. But yeah, there is room for $10 or $20 plays in that lens. And there's one thing to coach it and have that philosophy from the sidelines, but the players have to play the game, and sometimes you do have to throw caution to the wind a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what a young team that is growing and progressing needs to figure out, is when to take those plays, because that's what ultimately separates the teams that are kind of looking up at the contenders from the contenders. The contenders start figuring that stuff out. It just becomes innate in nature and somewhat kind of just instinctive, and that's where we're just quite not there yet still. And you saw at times last year the instinctive play come in, and that's where some of the exciting footy came from. But then the underswell of that was that we didn't have the build up playability. So we're building up the base, but you've still got to have that kind of excitement ability and those $10 to $20 to $50 plays to be able to make. So looking forward to seeing kind of what learnings we took from last week going into this week as well. It's a really it was a bit of a shock, a bit of a punch in the mouth that we copped last week against Hawthorn. So what we do to respond from that this week is going to be really, really important. If you've got anything else you want to bring up, Jamie, now's the time. But otherwise, like, what's your prediction, I guess, and hope out of this week's match?
My prediction is a win, and so it should be. I look at my side, and I admittedly do not have my finger on the pulse of the broader AFLW competition like I do the men's competition. We've obviously got to know a lot more of the players over the years that we've been doing this, but I see our team and see a very strong team that should be competitive with most sides every week. And GWS, I look at the players, I see similarities between the last time we played them. So, albeit natural progression can come in, draftees and whatnot, we beat them by 50 points. And it was, when we were well into our work, a bit similar to Hawthorn. We played them last year when we were well into our work, and can the early rounds make a difference? I guess that's what we're going to find out. But I just see a team there that has so much talent. And if we can find that balance, we should win quite comfortably. The Hawthorn game does, obviously, we got a firm punch in the mouth, and now there's a little bit of trepidation. Elise Parker, for one, who's in their centre line, didn't play against us last year. She unfortunately missed, I believe, most of the 2025 season, but she's a two-time All-Australian, and she started this season like a house on fire in their regard. So she's going to obviously be a big mover and shaker for them in terms of how they attack and defend. From their firepower, though, point of view as well, just before we close out, it's really interesting because in their win over West Coast, Tani Evans and Rebecca Beeson both kicked 3 goals. And then against Melbourne, they both went goalless. So it's a bit hard to gauge, at least, albeit the Hawthorn game is disappointing, at least, Lauren Young has kicked goals in both games, and, Gemma Houghton has impacted, whether it be goal assist in the Freo game, kicked her goal in the Hawthorn game in Indy Tahoe. There is, albeit slight, there is some continuity in output. So that's really interesting. It's hard to gauge from a GWS point of view.
Yeah.
Pope's a great call. Yeah, how could I forget Pope? Yeah, she started the season like house on fire in her own regard, and she's had some continuity. So at least we've got a little bit of that behind us. On their end of things, it'll be very interesting because it's a bit harder to gauge after an uplifting win in their regard against West Coast, and then a really disappointing loss. So, but I trust our backline. The likes of Emily Borg and Tegan Jermack have started the season really well, albeit, the likes of McDonough and Stockwell got away a little bit on Sunday. They've started well. Crane keeps her spot, which is interesting. Heartwarming that, one of the draftees stays in, and Syme heads all those key contributors. I expect them to front up quite well, and hopefully continue the goal drought for those 2 goal kickers I mentioned before.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a strong side that we line up. It is funny, the secret herbs and spices of how how the lists are put online, but it is just funny seeing the interchange bench with Ebony O'Day, Sinead Goody, Abby Darrick, Molly Brooksby, and Emily Elkington on there. It's like if you look at it and go, that's genuinely how they see a bench. It's a pretty good bench, yeah. It's good gear. No, I agree with you. I think it's one that we simply have to win. If we are a team as young and growing as we still are, if we are a team that is looking towards trying to break back into the finals mix, and this is the game we simply have to win. Particularly after dropping a home match early as well, as good as the opposition as Hawthorn is. We've got to keep ahead of the ledger and not get behind, because that's what it felt like last year. We were chasing the 500 record, so to speak, all year, and we finally got there by the end of the year. Whereas this year, you want to stay ahead of that and start building the wins early. So, and this one against a team that, wherever they end up this year, we look at them and go, look, GWS away is one of those ones that you kind of key in and hope to get if you're going to be making finals. So, yeah, it's an important one to win. I expect us to win. And, I think we'll be back here. Be an intriguing review on Tuesday either way. Hopefully we're reviewing a lot of positives out of it and some good signs and learnings out of the Hawthorn match. But if it all goes awry, then it'll be an intriguingly an interesting review either way. But we're very, very hopeful that we're here with you on Tuesday evening, recording a very, very positive review of what hopefully is a bounce back win for your Port Adelaide Footy Club. So anything else from you, Jamie, or are you ready to hit the weekend?
I'm ready to hit the weekend. And on that note, I hope everyone else enjoys their weekend, enjoy the footy, wherever you're watching from on Sunday. And we'll see you back here next week. Calm the lady pair.
Absolutely, calm the lady pair. And let me tell you, I'm fucking excited just to be doing one match this weekend. Completely focused on the ladies. Oh, looking forward to just focusing on them. So, thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. I will see you here next week for the review. Cheers.